The man busking in the middle of the street was named James. He was a drug addict who had been abandoned by his family and had become a homeless busker, playing music on the streets just to scrounge up enough money for food. Every day he had to sleep on the streets and often rummage through trash to fill his empty stomach. Nobody seemed to care about him, including the staff at a certain restaurant. When James didn't have enough money, instead of giving him his food, the waiter would dump it down the drain. Feeling sad, James would have to leave. His desire to reconnect with his family was immense. Eventually, James decided to join a drug rehabilitation program. However, one day, one of his fellow addict friends, Baz, asked James to get into a stolen car. Baz tried to persuade James to start using drugs again. Initially, James refused, but eventually gave in and lost consciousness. After the car's owner discovered them, James was rushed to the hospital. When his rehabilitation counselor, Val, visited him, James kept asking about his guitar, which was his only possession. Val, who was fed up, told James that this was the last time she would help him, and that she wouldn't accept his apologies anymore, because this wasn't the first time James had broken his promise to stay off drugs. After being discharged from the hospital, James visited Val's office and apologized again. Fortunately, Val forgave James on the condition that he would visit her every 2 weeks to ensure his progress. Val also gave James a methadone prescription to help manage his addiction. As James's counselor, Val was very concerned about his well-being and even asked her supervisor to provide James with housing, believing that as long as James was homeless, his rehabilitation program wouldn't succeed. James was overjoyed when he saw his new home and expressed endless gratitude to Val. He promised to follow the rehabilitation program diligently until he was completely free from drugs. On his first day in his new home, James enjoyed a warm bath when he suddenly heard a suspicious noise. After investigating, he found a cat. Realizing the orange cat was hungry, James quickly gave it some milk. This showed that James had a kind heart. With patience, James initially told the cat to go home, fearing its owner would be looking for it. However, seeing the cat's expression, James allowed it to stay overnight. The next day, James decided to search for the owner of the orange cat by knocking on doors. However, unable to find the owner, James eventually let the cat go. In the city, while busking in front of a building, James unexpectedly ran into his father. James told his father that he was currently undergoing a rehabilitation program. In front of his stepmother, who disliked James, he asked if he could spend Christmas with his father, but his stepmother refused. After she left, James's father gave him some money for supplies. When James returned home, he was surprised to find the orange cat whimpering in pain due to injuries on its body. Concerned, James quickly sought help. Luckily, his neighbor Bertie provided first aid to the cat. Bertie happened to be a volunteer at a free animal health clinic and suggested that James bring the cat there. Before leaving, Bertie suggested naming the cat Bob, and James agreed. At the clinic, James felt hesitant due to the long queue, especially since it was the day he was supposed to visit Val's office. However, for Bob's health, James chose to wait. After the examination, James had to pay for the medication, which was quite expensive. The clinic could only waive the examination fee, not the medication cost. Reluctantly, James used the money his father had given him to buy Bob's medication. At home, James struggled to give Bob the medication and had to ask Bertie for help. Bertie also gave James 2 packs of meat for Bob. Despite living next to an addict, Bertie revealed that he was clean from drugs. Hearing this, James felt compelled to lie and claimed he was a musician looking for inspiration to write a new song. The next day, James met with Val to explain why he couldn't keep his promise the day before. With a cheerful face, James told Val about his new friends, Bob and Bertie. However, after hearing about Bertie, Val became worried and warned James that his current condition wasn't suitable for starting a relationship. James felt sad, but Bob's presence brought him some comfort.
Okay, Bob. You only eat what I give you.
One day when James was about to go to the city to busk, Bob would always follow him even though James had forbidden him. However, wherever James went, Bob would keep chasing him. So whether James liked it or not, he had to bring Bob along to busk with him. It turned out that Bob's presence could attract people's attention, and some even asked to take photos with them. Usually, when James busked, no one would listen. But this time with Bob, many people watched and listened and even gave him money. For the first time, James felt extremely happy because he could earn a lot of money from busking. An elderly woman who had watched their performance approached them and said that Bob would be James's life partner because he could be a better companion than humans. After the woman left, James's old friend Baz, who had once tempted James, happened to see James putting away the money he earned from busking. Curious about James's current life, Baz followed him. The next day, when James was about to go busking again, Baz suddenly approached him. James didn't want to associate with Baz anymore because he was afraid of being tempted again. So, to get rid of Baz, James gave him some money. In the city, Bob once again stole the show, and many people loved James's performance, including the elderly woman who had visited him before. This time, the woman brought Christmas gifts for Bob, including food and a scarf. The presence of Bob and Bertie gave James a newfound spirit after being neglected by his family. Finally, James felt happy again, and he poured out his gratitude to Bertie, thanking God for sending Bob and Bertie into his life. The next day, James bought various types of food for Bob, showing how much he cared for him. Wherever James went, Bob would always ride on his shoulders. However, when they returned home, James was shocked to find his friend lying on the floor due to an overdose. Panicked, James screamed for help and Bertie came to his aid. Luckily, an ambulance arrived soon after and took Baz to the hospital. Afterward, Bertie was traumatized and explained that he used to live with his brother, who was an addict, and it took months for him to recover after losing his brother. Since then, Bertie didn't want to have any relationship with an addict. Hearing this, James immediately met with Val and expressed his desire to quickly get clean from drugs. He wanted to stop taking methadone, but Val explained that he had to follow the process step by step. Val promised that after Christmas, James could try to stop taking methadone. To make a long story short, Christmas Day arrived. With some trepidation, James decided to visit his father's house. However, unexpectedly, Bob caused chaos, breaking a flower vase and knocking over the Christmas tree. James was chased away. Fortunately, James could still celebrate Christmas with Bob and Bertie, and he felt very happy. He even received a painting as a gift from Bertie. James felt grateful for his improving life. One day, while busking, someone intentionally let their dog urinate on James's bag, making James very upset and emotional. The police, who witnessed the incident, brought them in. Luckily, Val was able to bail James out, but with the condition that James was no longer allowed to busk, and if caught, he would face 6 months in prison. However, James was not concerned about himself. He was worried about his friend Bob. To calm him down, Val told James to pick up his methadone prescription at the pharmacy. At the pharmacy, Bertie happened to see James taking methadone, which made Bertie extremely angry. Bertie felt betrayed because James had been lying to him. Bertie refused to listen to James's explanation, and the happiness James had recently felt disappeared instantly. To make a living, James started working as a vendor for the Big Issue. Before selling, his supervisor explained the rules. After listening, James began his job. Thanks to Bob, James easily sold the newspapers. They even caught the attention of a reporter who was passing by. With permission, the reporter interviewed James and Bob. This made one of James's colleagues jealous and resentful, especially when someone asked for a photo with James and bought his newspaper in their sales area. The colleague reported James to their supervisor, resulting in James being banned from selling for a month. One day, James became frustrated because his funds were running low. Hearing Bob's constant meowing pushed James's emotions to the limit, and he snapped at Bob. However, he immediately realized his mistake. To make ends meet, James bravely decided to busk again. He busked from one place to another until Bertie saw him and scolded James for disobeying the police's warning. During the scolding, Bertie indirectly revealed that he had developed feelings for James. To make a long story short, James's ban ended, and he could resume selling newspapers. However, unexpectedly, while he was selling, someone approached him and forced James to sell Bob to their child. Fearing for his safety and thinking he would be sold, Bob ran away. Losing Bob made James extremely sad and worried about Bob's well-being. His deep affection for Bob led him to blame himself for not being able to protect his friend. This situation worried Val. During Bob's disappearance, the news about James and Bob went viral, catching the attention of a literary agency's leader. After days of searching with no sign of Bob, James, feeling hopeless, approached a drug dealer in his neighborhood, not to buy drugs, but to ask if they had seen his cat. As soon as James returned home, Bob was already there, which greatly relieved him. James immediately hugged Bob, overjoyed to be reunited. To make a long story short, Val finally allowed James to stop taking methadone for a week, which was the last step in his rehabilitation process. With Bob by his side, James was confident he could succeed. Before starting the final process, James apologized to Bertie for his past behavior, and Bertie, who had feelings for James, forgave him and encouraged him to complete his rehabilitation. After a week of withdrawal symptoms, James successfully completed his rehabilitation, with Bob always by his side. James's life changed dramatically. He was now completely free from drugs. Val was overjoyed with James's achievement. When James was about to share the good news with Bertie, he found out that Bertie would be moving to live with his parents. However, Bertie reassured James that it wouldn't be a goodbye since James could still visit him. Days later, a literary agency interested in James's story offered him a book deal. They wanted to publish a book about James and Bob, written by James himself. On his way back from the meeting, James visited his father's house and was overjoyed to share the news that he was clean from drugs. James apologized for his past mistakes, and his father gave him a photo he had kept in his wallet. It turned out that James's father hadn't abandoned him. He was just ashamed of not being a good father. The launch of James's first book was a huge success, with many people queuing for his autograph and Bob's paw print. Everyone who had been part of James's journey attended the event, including Bertie, Val, and James's father. James expressed his gratitude for the important people in his life who had helped him get a second chance. Thanks to Bob, James was able to turn his life around and live a better life, free from drug addiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Amri Film channel so you don't miss the next movie recaps.